talk the second half a little bit about those are the blocks, you might say, to getting more clear in the mind, to hear your heart, and to get a little bit more of an angle on what your question is. I'd like to talk a little more about what transcendence might mean. This has a little bit something to do with what Mike Connors will be showing you a little later in terms of what you might call effortlessness, how things can be effortless in transcendence. Rather than trying to turn ourselves into saints, whatever that means, and get into perfectionism and trying to behavior modification, we just want to disidentify with the personality, with the body-mind. Get into this transcendence. Show you a little bit about what this happens with some stories here. I know there's something that probably bugs the heck out of all of y'all. It's a pet peeve I know I had for years and years, and that's having to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Not exactly a spiritual thing, but if you get there in the middle of the night, and I used to just hate this, you're laying there in a nice warm bed, everything's fine, and you try to ignore it for a while. No, it'll go away. I can get back to sleep. I'll just, wait it out. I'm not going to think about this. It gets worse and worse, and after a while, okay, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to get out of the warm covers. I got to get up, stumble into the bathroom, bump into the walls, and turn the lights on, and blast out my eyeballs. And then I got to figure out how to get back to sleep. This little thing drive you nuts here. So I happened to wake up, and it was in the middle of the night. So you can catch something in this kind of halfway dream state when you're not fully awake, and the personality little thing I think Steve said on a tape one time about, it's time to go to work. Off to work we go. When you wake up and your feet hit the floor, you can get a little clearer mind in between there. So I'm laying there in the covers, only half awake, and this little voice says something in my head about, we don't have to do that. Let's try and do this differently. Let's don't get up and make this huge hassle and be the doer. Let's just get up and go to the bathroom without going to the bathroom. So let's just give this a shot. And I'm like, wow, what a great idea. So being half asleep, I noticed that I could get up. Bob went to the bathroom and came back, and it was effortless. I had nothing to do with it. So the whole problem was solved there through a period of transcendence, not by trying to not have to do the thing, but simply by not being involved in a willful doership kind of way. It doesn't have to be, negative, setting up other kinds of mindsets, trying to figure out how to get around this stuff, but simply this little manner of effortless transcendence of it. Another way to talk about this with another little story is the same thing happened. I woke up one morning, laying there, staring out the pillow, looking over, and there's this hideous noise going on. And I noticed there's a little box there. And all of a sudden, his arm shoots out from under the covers, fumbles around with the box, the noise goes off, and the hand shoots back. And I'm laying there thinking, what in the heck is going on? And it slowly dawns on me, that was my alarm clock. That was my hand. And I didn't have to do anything. It just happened. It wasn't this big, oh no, I'd smash the alarm clock and roll over. It was just all this stuff was going on. The awareness wasn't lost in that part of the mind. This is kind of what I'm talking about with transcendence, little instances of how you can see in your personal life how you don't have to be willfully involved in everything, getting emotional negativity on it all. Another example of this is, say, you don't have to worry about what your guts are doing. They're fine down there. They're doing their job. Your skin's okay. I don't have to sit here and force my fingernails to grow. This stuff is all being taken care of. Now, on this chart over here, the same thing can be happening. You can transcend this, and the things of the mind can then be effortless. They can be transcended. You don't have to be in there nitpicking and micromanaging every little emotional aspect that's going on in your life there. This is kind of an easy, light mood can kind of keep this happening. The only problem you can have with some of these things is this might happen in the wrong time. I'm not going to pick on Voss up there. I think Voss was driving down the freeway in traffic when all of a sudden he didn't know who was driving the car. So you might want to try and keep these things in your bed where it's safe. Don't have to be out there roaming down the highway. It used to happen to me driving out to TAT meetings for long periods of time, and you look down and you don't know whose hands those are. You know, what are those things doing down there? You have absolutely no relationship to them. This is the same thing with any kind of familiar associative mind process. You can look at this. Can you look at that without having any thoughts about it? No associations whatsoever. You know, this is getting back to a more primal part of yourself rather than trying to add on more layers that come through this. We might think, you know, we've got little T truths to work on, but we might not know what they are. How do we find out if that's what we want to do? How do we find out that we've got direct mind things we might want to be doing? Do we want to do meditations? Do we want to go into more psychological work? How do we know this? How can we get a handle on that? I think we can do this by dancing with a partner, different partners, changing them over. Dancing with little T truth, then with big truth. Dancing with a teacher of the mind, then maybe a teacher of no mind. Alternating direct looking with psychological work. You can start looking at things like the relationship of thought and awareness Rose was talking about, the space between thoughts, silence, listening for intuition and insight. What does going within mean? What is looking and looking? You know, if you have problems with these things in terms of getting any kind of handle of understanding or practice on them, then why? Why is that? You can also do the experiments like with Jim Burns, very simple thing. He said two people walking down a street, they'll see two different worlds, two different things on the sides of the road. Now, why do you see what you see? What are your daydreams about all day? What's going through your mind? What are your dreams? This can show you what do I need to be working on. Another way of thinking of this is alternations between rest and work. Periods of calm, something might pop into your head to show you what you need to be working on. You go to stress at work, find out what in the heck you can't stand about it, what's driving you crazy there. What can I do to disidentify with that? You know, the question is sort of like, what else is bubbling around down in here that I'm not aware of? It's trying to get my attention, and it's tying me up. Stir the pot again, something else might happen. You get something else you can look at. Alternate between isolation, spending time alone, spending time with teachers and groups, confrontation and family. See what the differences are. You know, spending time in confrontation or with family and work can knock your peace right out the window and give you something to look at. How did that happen so easy? You know, somebody was saying earlier they got out of isolation and went into a Walmart. What a way to shock you out of it. Or coming in out of isolation and seeing a TV for the first time. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, how hypnotic is that? And it gives you a little idea of what you might have to work on, one helping the other out, this stressful life, and the difference of being out by yourself. It's like work and vacations, work and rest. You can maybe triangulate above them both, get somewhere more real. And not conceptually, but find out if this is real. Another thing you can look at is the old who are you question in a practical sense. Instead of going at it from, who are you and trying to work it out, verbal self-inquiry, look at it right at the time. What's going on right then? Who am I right now today? What's my sense of that? Where am I in my head? Am I watching all this or am I lost in it? There's a little trick I came up with one day that to me shows how much of what we think we are is arbitrary. You can close your eyes and do it with a Harding experiment, kind of a feeling is present time awareness, no inference, and close your eyes and scratch your nose. And with your eyes closed, reach around and scratch the back of your neck. Now, where in you do you see that happening? If you can look at it without the arbitrary things you were taught in your whole life, you might see that that's happening in the same place. That you body-mind is arbitrarily putting a before me and a behind me in there. You see that you might be looking at them both from the same spot rather than having one in front and one in back. Just looking at what you think you are without projecting, can change every day. Is it a change of perspective, a change of point of view? Too often we get too intellectual about that. It's not looking at it about, where am I right now? What am I? Rose has a quote, and he says, "At the same time that we examine ourselves psychologically, we should examine ourselves directly. These are important questions of which we should always be aware. We should now look at thought itself and look for the relationship between awareness and thought." Look at where you are. Look at the space between thoughts. You might can see a little bit. Awareness, the relationship between thought and awareness. Well, that's it for the first formal part of this. I'd like to ask Miss Tess to come on up here, see if we can. I had Karina to do this because Karina is a dancer and she didn't show up today. She was kind enough to volunteer. Let's see if we can get out. I thought we'd do a little formal letting go. In the spirit of bringing these things out, making a little commitment to ourselves, that we're going to have, this is like one of the AA steps. I can't remember which one it is. You bring everything out in front of you and make amends and deal with it with another person. We've got one more in the back here. This is probably, you want to read this. You don't want to post that. Now, since neither one of us are dancers, I had our dancers who were going to come and help me with this, but it didn't happen. So let's go ahead. And we'll walk up just to do an introduction. You can come out here. Let's do a courtesy to this. Let's do unto ourselves here. Let's move back over here. And we're going to each take one of these things. And I'm going to drop one first, and then you drop one second. These are letting goes. We're going to let go of this one, let go of that one, and then there we go. To get rid of these things, we're also going to have Mr. Dave Weimer incinerate. With the germs. Yeah, with a few thousand germs. I don't know how many of you heard of Vicki Woodyard. She's a woman down in Atlanta, Southern lady. Had a book she just came out with a while ago, Life with a Hole in It, because that's where the light comes in. She worked with Vernon Howard for years in person, and then had a very agonizing time when her little daughter died of cancer slowly, and then her husband died of cancer slowly. And she said, that was the hole in my life that forced me to go within and look at things. And coupled with working with Vernon, I think, really she's a very practical lady. This certain type of Southern lady, there's some of them, I think, Art mentioned to me one time in AA, you get to a certain time, a woman who's later in life, she's not putting up with any bullshit anymore. So it's kind of like that writing back and forth with Vicki. You can get the handle on her. She likes to post on Facebook a lot. A lot of times it's marketing for her book, but she does some pretty darn good stuff. I've gotten a kick out of knowing her over the years, and she mentioned something that related with me the way I felt about Rose. She said that coming into a room unexpectedly out of the corner of the eye where Vernon Howard was sitting sometimes made her think there was a lion sitting there because of the force of the guy's personality. And this is the ego being freaked out by what's in this guy. We can't see it in ourselves yet. We can feel it out in the guru. But with Rose, it would do the same thing to me. I was sitting in a room with him and thought I was sitting in a room with a live atomic weapon. There was something about this guy that was just going to annihilate everything. This was the ego looking out there and seeing, the guru, and he's out manifested. I don't want to think that that's inside of you all the time. Mr. Rose, you can get away from the farm and make it go away, but that part of us is in there. And the ego can be very scared of this. Vicki wrote a little piece she posted up on Facebook when I was working on this talk, and it struck me with the synchronistic of it. It's a little dance theme essay she's got on here, and I thought, oh wow, that's perfect. What a great present she's stuck up on here. She said that there is a price to be paid for awakening. It's not the one size fits all that is given out so freely and easily online. I can only speak for myself, but Rumi said it best. The price of kissing is your life. The moment you enter the aura of an awakened teacher, you reel from the shock. Why? Because he or she is a merciless spotlight shining on the criminal elements in you. You cringe, you pull back. But the small part of you that wants the light has brought you to the party and will see to it that you get the last dance. Mine has been a long time coming because I would flee in horror at the complexity of the steps. 1, let go. 2, let go. Over and over, I danced through the years. I listened to talks about it, but I refused to get out on the floor with this terrible teacher. There must be another way, I thought, again and again. I tried dancing with a false teacher. Didn't work. Looked for an easier way. Couldn't find it. 1, let go. 2, let go. The teacher was waiting for me. He had infinite patience. He was dancing with other students. Why was I so reluctant? Admittedly, it was not a crowded floor. The truth never dances with pretenders. 1, let go. 2, let go. Some of us are slow learners, but that is not the point. The dance awaits, no matter how long it takes. The dancers disappear into the dance, and the music plays on. I don't know how many of you might have had anything to do with Vicki, but it might be worthwhile for, especially some of the females, getting in touch with her. She's got a pretty unique perspective there. Well, that's pretty much it for the talk here. I'd like to do something about questions and answers if anybody does have anything they want to know more about TAT or about the talk. So we've got a lot of people here that know a lot more about TAT than I did. I didn't get into it until in the 90s. Some of these guys weren't around Rose most of their lives, just about.
Hello. First, I just admire your story from somewhat of a drunk to a model of personal enlightenment. Just that whole...
I like this guy. I got your paycheck for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just inspiring.
Well,
so
thanks.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'm good. I think the story stuff that's what got me with Rose. He'd talk to me about things.
Right.
This is what happened to me. This isn't theoretical.
Exactly. Makes it real.
Yeah.
One comment on words. Words mean a lot to me. Just the power of words. The word block and omen, bad omen. Yeah. I tend to use the words learning opportunity.
Yeah. Well,
then it kind of flips it to a positive that in some ways you can even embrace, even though it's bad. You got to learn with the emotions, you got to learn with the pain, got to deal with the grief, and then underneath it there's a learning opportunity. So I just like your perspective on that.
I think that's true. It's hard in the moment to maybe pull that up, I mean, when something, bad happens, you see something come through and you've got that bad gree feeling I talk about. coming through. It might take you a while to figure that out. Like, in those stories, it was the other people around that popped me into more of the learning experience. They look at me with that face about, what the hell is wrong with you? And you can see that, something's going on there that you're not aware of. You're lost in it. You lose yourself. And I think doing that other moment period takes a little reflection, to see the good side of it, because it might go against your ego. You might not want to see it. And be careful. You don't want to just throw it in there and become positive. I mean, that's just the other side. You want to have that moment of understanding, where your part in it. That you were wrong in some instances. Rose used to tell a story of a little hunchback kid that everybody used to pick on, and Rose was picking on him, and the guy said he was going to smack Rose or he'd beat him up or something, and Rose said it was years later before he realized his part in it. Yeah, I was picking on the kid. It was my fault. What's the other side here? Anybody else got anything? Go with a poet.
No poetry. The question I have, Bob, is when you look at the blocks internally, as I have done in the past, there's a mountain of it. They're not just one or two, right? There's just an incredible number of blocks. Mm-hmm. And if you have to get through all of them before you get to first base, we could be here several lifetimes.
Mm-hmm. You got to work on them in terms of patterns. You can't go through there in every single one. We don't have time. We just don't. I think Jim Burns talks about this good bit. There's just you can't get hung up in the details. How do you see the pattern? What's the main ones? Looking at all the little details of, oh my God, when I was on the floor and I was 2 years old, my mama said this to my daddy, and then you got to look at where does that emotion kick in and how is it hooked into the things I go through in day-to-day life. That stuff's always floating around there. We're keeping it, energized. So it can't be infinite or we wouldn't be able to carry it. So, work at the big pattern. And it's still a mountain of work. It's true. I know Mike Connors likened something about shame to like a glacier. And then it finally turned down into more of a ice cube or whatever. You can get it down from, it feels like that at first. That, how am I going to ever work my way through this mess? But you can. If you take it as universal and as pattern oriented as you can, and it'll start busting it up.
Kind of organize it into little chunks or big chunks.
Yeah, you get the big chunks out of the way. Like I said, you don't have to get lost in the detail. It's just another trap. Just look for the big overall, say 2 or 3 patterns in your life. The Gurdjieffians and Rose and stuff would call that chief feature. What's the biggest one? You hung up on, pride or fear. Start working out from that angle. How can you start looking at yourself? And just making a step is a huge thing to do, just to admit that you got to do it. I know people who were on their deathbed before that happened. They assumed that they were going and everything was going to go exactly like they wanted. And then when that final moment comes and there's absolutely nothing that can be done, that was the first time they had ever faced themselves. So, don't wait that long.
Thank you.
Okay, you say look at the patterns. Can the patterns be too general? Like, for instance, I'm like thinking, when I look at my stuff, it all boils down to, that I feel unloved and unlovable,
Mm-hmm.
And that everything that I do actually in some way reflects that,
Yeah.
And so then I guess my question is, is that too general?
No, I don't think it's too general at all. You just got to start working on, why and how. Why did that happen to you? What led you out? You've got a belief system there that upholds that. What is the belief system that's keeping that in you? How do you question that? One of the best things you can do is just stare at it in a attention type sense.
Well, then what comes up
Yeah,
there
and then what comes up, I mean,
is that I'm not good enough.
yeah,
There's this perfectionism, that I
yeah.
don't, like, even in letting go, I don't know how to let go. It's like I don't know how, I'm just not good enough. So that's
Yeah.
the other.
Look at the belief. How did you get into buying that? It's not true, I mean, I'm assuming. I mean, you don't look like you got here, so you must be doing pretty good. So, how do you get? Why do you have that belief? Can you pull up, any dream associations with it? Can you look at what's going on in your life? Do you sabotage yourself? Is that a voice from your parents? That planted that in you? It's not natural. So, how can you find a hook to get you in there? That might be a hard one. It took me a long time to be able to get into fear and pride because the ego just refuses to allow you to get in there and start doing anything with this. The dreams for me were a really good way because I could look at them sideways, so to speak. They didn't hurt so bad right off the bat. And the ego couldn't block them, but then I could look at them during the day and get a look at what I couldn't look at. Associations can be really helpful with that too. What is that feeling associated with? And look at the opposite. What's the function of this? What is it practically doing to you?
Keeping me stuck.
It's keeping stuck, and and it's not. You're not going to be able to do anything you want to do as long as you're like that. So, how do you? What are these things?
And then I had one more question. This is kind of like. And I don't know, you were talking about like that, you look at this stuff and you like step back from it. And actually this question isn't going to come out. But anyhow, I'm just wondering if there's a, when I'm feeling all my, whatever the thing is, I'm feeling it, right? And then when I step back, then I don't feel it. You know what I mean? It's like I just observe it. And I was talking last night to whatchamacallit, that it's kind of clinical. And what I say is it feels cold. And I feel like somehow I need to bring the warmth of my experience into my objective or observation. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like I feel like I'm not detaching correctly because it is cold.
You're looking at it theoretically, sort of, rather than actually seeing what's going on. It might be just the only way you can handle it.
So how do you detach or become objective in a way that brings the whole to it? Am I making sense?
Yeah. You detach to it through understanding, comprehension. You have to be conscious of all facets of it. You can't just look at it as if it was objects moving around. What were the motivations, going on in things? We're not cold and clinical creatures, so what was happening? What was the motivations behind looking at things? If you see them cold and clinical, that's not how they got going. Mm-hmm. So what was back there? Look at it a little bit at a time. That's why I'm saying dream work can be pretty good, because it can allow you to get a really good look at yourself without it being too much or too painful.
But what if you don't remember your dreams?
You can start working on it. If you do, the more you try to remember your dreams, the more it works. If you just get up and go, you're not going to remember them. But if you put a notebook by your bed with a pad of paper or a tape recorder and make a commitment to it, that every time you wake up, I'm not going to let my feet hit the floor before I remember my dreams. That can help a lot, It's very easy to just go from sleep and bam, we're out the door, And so you can work at it. If it still doesn't work, you might have to do more of a conscious association type thing.
What's a conscious?
Well, associate things, if you have those clinical moments, or you look at moments when you feel like you're incapable, try and associate it with something in your life or in a memory, and follow those associations back till you hit pay dirt, so to speak. Might be good to get in some kind of group thing, I know I had a heck of a lot of success with AA type groups, and a lot of other people have. It can give you a safe place to talk.
Yeah, I've been there for 20 years.
20 years. I was in groups for years with people that you know, were never past the point of looking at the steps, and their higher power was a doorknob, you know. So, it was, yeah, so it, you know, I think some things work for some people others. Sometimes direct confrontation won't work for people. I know sometimes when I would get into what TAT would do with confrontation, I would just go blank. I couldn't think of anything. It just shut down. Dream work would enable me to look back at stuff and get a handle on it. You could try free association and automatic writing, where you just start writing things out. Or like I was talking about with artwork, you know, I went through a period of about a year when I was doing these wild watercolors with all this strange stuff that was going on. In my head, I did a watercolor of that 3-story house. I did a watercolors about all the struggles with celibacy that was going on, you know, because it seemed to be very image related. I couldn't get it into words. But when I'd start drawing the stuff out, I'd look back at it and go, oh my Lord, what did I just do? You bet. Oh,
Hi, Bob.
yeah,
Thank you.
you bet.
I've been I've become recently aware of how, when I'm listening to your talk or listening to anyone, there's a lot of chatter that gets in the way of the listening.
Yeah,
You spoke a little bit about this before, and when you were talking about exploring that new river and the boat and everything, what happens? I really got into the story. And then I embellish the story. I get stuck in the story of what you're telling, and I forget. I don't hear what else you're saying after that until I become aware I'm not listening.
yeah. You go off into the
I go off.
fantasy. It starts with the associations. Yeah.
And everything that stands in my way is always a me,
Yeah.
a me and myself and an I.
Mm-hmm.
And all during your talk, I have to keep reminding myself to look at this nakedly, look at this freshly, look at this, what you're saying, and be attentive. And then, even as I do that, I want to judge myself for not listening. Then I go into that, and then I look at that, you know, and so that's but this has all happened recently, that I've become aware.
Become aware of how you can see that in
happening.
yourself now.
You know,
Yeah.
so this is like, I guess this is my obstacle. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to what I'm asking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just stating where I am, and consciousness, awareness, or whatever.
Yeah, that's a very common. You know, we always want to keep that. That's a good example to me is Hederman's selfing. You know, we've got to keep that ego afloat through our little stories.
Yeah, that's it.
And it turns back around to I, me, mine, you know.
Yes.
You're listening to somebody talk or having a conversation, and all of a sudden all you can think about is what I want to say next.
Yeah.
You know, I want to tell my part of it, you know, and boom, boom, and that comes through. One thing you can do, learned helped me a lot, was looking at that feeling you get when you say I to yourself in those stories, or me. It's got a very distinct primal feel to it. You know, there's a certain, when we say I, and you catch it before you get into the verbal stuff, you can feel that. And that wants to come up and always assert itself.
And the I that you're talking about, I often can't find it.
Really? Yeah.
There's just a static, and I do look for the I. I'm back into meditation these days, and it's been serving me really well.
I was going to say, it sounds like you were doing something to pop this up. Yeah.
Yeah, and but I do get stuck, and I'm just sharing this because I want to hear myself talk.
Yeah, you got the microphone, so you can.
And sometimes in the speaking, I hear what I'm saying, you know, and even though it may not be completely what I want to say, it's on the line of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You know. Thank you.
You know, when this afternoon, Mike's going to show us a really good way to get a look at that. You know, I've always been real impressed with the way he can show us how that mind does this thing. With the circle, you know, you get into the spot where you're listening, and then you get out of it, and you get back into it, and you get out of it, and it goes around and around and around. And you know, practice makes perfect in a way. You know, if you can keep at it, you can lengthen the times out that in between where that projecting mechanism jumps back in there and starts back up with the story again. So I think if you started meditating, that could be what's bringing this back up. We get resistance. You know, we make a move, there's a counter move. You know, that's what a lot of people don't understand. And as I run into emails and people in Boulder, which is a pretty strange place, where they have this idea that getting what they want is what they're trying to do, and spirituality is going to be their ticket to get there. And anything that's any kind of resistance pops up, then they think it's God's will that they shouldn't do that. This is like me and the fly fishing, you know. It's like, if I'm going to meditate and then I notice that there's resistance, then it must be because it's the wrong meditation. If I can't be enlightened, you know, and have it really easy in 2 weeks, I got to change teachers. Because there's always that resistance pops up. It's a good sign in a way, you know. The more resistance you get, you know, could be, you know, you're getting too close to something that's good. You know?
I'd like to talk a little bit about transcendence, what you were talking. I suffer from this syndrome where I tend to believe what I think is true.
No, yeah, it's kind of human, isn't it?
And I'm wondering too, like a part of what I hear you saying is just reframing whatever my thoughts are. Like one of the prayers I've recently, when I get stuck, is, you know, God, please help me see this differently.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'm wondering about is this something like after an awakening where it just happens organically? There's no, like, for me, there's always a gap between like the stressful thought and then the being able to see it differly.
Yeah,
and it might be an hour,
yeah,
it might be a day, you know, before I can do that, as opposed to it never happening in the first place because I've transcended it. You know, am I making any sense?
Well, where's the emotional element?
Excuse me?
Where's the emotional element in this?
When you say where,
Yeah, is it present?
Sure.
I mean, yeah. And is there release from it?
Well, the release is seeing it differently.
Yeah.
Like I get so attached to, you know, either having my perspective being validated. Thank you. And you know, and when that doesn't happen, I get kind of crazy. Like, and then I can finally like just say, how do I need that? Do I need I can validate my own perception, and that's enough. But it takes some time to get there.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Well, I guess I'm wishing it just was an instantaneous, like I didn't have to go through, you know, the whole rigmarole, that I could just, you know, be at peace, you know, instead of having to.
Yeah, you want to stand on top of the pyramid and fall off.
Damn straight.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to have to go through all that work. Oh my God. Yeah, that's true, and you can't. I don't know. I don't know how to. All I can tell you is there is hope. You know, there is a part of you that's beyond all that. You can just get, you know, past the need to. Maybe you like that pattern. Maybe it makes you feel good to solve problems. You know.
Well, I noticed the more I do it, the less Velcro there is.
Yeah.
You know, and I definitely see that happening.
Yeah, and you can see if you're getting something out of it. You know, the ego loves to invent problems that it can then solve and then pat itself on the back. You know, it gives us something to do. You know, it's really hard to not have problems.
The sneaky bastard.
Yeah, definitely. Daniel.
You had said something about that you can like get out of the way and the mind will try to solve the energy knots on its own?
It's got the mind's got an automatic function to do its job really well if it's not being interfered with, or if it's not, all the energy is not being siphoned out, so there's nothing left.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, is there some like attitude or something like that, some way of holding your head, or some formula to get to that point where the mind is actually, working on trying to solve that, trying to clear that stuff up?
So that it will work on its own? Yeah, it's got to be, what I'm saying is you got to get off that bottom line somehow or another. What's hanging you up on that? So that you're not identified with the body-mind doer guy. Then this stuff will happen automatically. It could be a survival thing emotionally. If we've got a sense in there that I'm not controlling and I'm not keeping this, all just as much under control as I need it to be, if I let my little, hand slip off the lever for a minute, then all hell's going to break loose. And a lot of people think that. They think if they get to an effortless state or, transcendence, that what that means is they're going to end up running down the street, ripping their clothes off, going nuts, And so what's the, what would be the emotional block in there that's causing the cramp? If there's, like Romana said, we don't have to bring space in from outside. We just got to remove the cramping. And it's if the mind's got an emotional cramp in there that's too dang tough that we can't seem to let loose on, we're going to want to stay in control. I know people who have to stay in very much control in their lives through that state all day so that they can stay away from themselves. They can't look at themselves because they just don't feel they've got the time or the energy. They might, pull up, a bag of worms. I'd say look at, this survival self. What's the what in there is trying to hold on to the steering wheel so hard that it won't let go. Because it will, take care of that. It's like saying we don't have to make our fingernails grow or don't have to digest lunch, in conscious time. So, why would we, have a fear that if I'm not in there micromanaging this, it's going to go wrong?
I can definitely relate to trying to micromanage everything.
Or the opposite side is, hey, there's nothing to do, so let's party.
So you're saying some kind of basically observation of what's going on is what leads to that point?
Yeah. Well, what leads to the cramping? Where's the cramping at? Can you get a look at it? And with that block.
What if you can't see the cramp?
Yeah, if you can't see the cramp, then you're in a different spot. It's a whole different ball game. You'd have to infer it. By looking at your behavior. You can look at stuff that you're doing all day and look at it and go, what the heck is that all about? And see the cramp, in its manifestation rather than, feel it. And then you can come around to it later like that.
You have to sense that something's wrong at that point, but what if you don't have that sense?
Well,
You don't see that cramp.
I would say then go out and get in trouble, life's going to provide it for you, and sooner or later you'll see it and feel it. I think the worst possible person that you can have in the spiritual work is somebody who's everything's always going for them. They have no reason to look at themselves whatsoever.
Well, I did have one more question. You had also said something about the love of darkness keeps us rooted.
Love of darkness is what keeps us from seeing the light. The light's there. We don't have to invent it or strike a match. We just got to stop being in love with whatever's blindfolding us or whatever's keeping us looking the other way. It's a hard, tricky thing to see self-love in a very good way because a lot of what we're in love with and keep going is not flattering, and we'll argue till we fall over that I really don't like that. I don't want to be like that, but you do. Somehow or another, it's there.
Yeah, I guess So I guess what I was wondering is, like in terms of, is there some point where that flips, where it's, I guess it's where the instead of being, instead of going for darkness or being attached to darkness, to some, where the mind can sort of get a clearer reading. So like in terms of there being feeling like there's a black wall.
Yeah.
It's starting to feel like that's the light at some point.
I think what happens more or less is it's retreat from error. It's backing away. You just got to get rid of of whatever you're in love with. If you get rid of it, then the other stuff is already there. You don't have to worry about it. Everything's okay. It's just we're in love with everything being a drama. There's really nothing real to worry about. It's just we've been taught that there's all kinds of bad things that we need to control and watch out for. We just got to stop staring at the drama or the bad side of it.
The other side of the coin is that, aside from the struggle, is that if you can find that effortless state, that seems to be the best therapy possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you have a flash of it, like those little glimpses I was given, and see that it's a possibility, because we might not think it's real. I got the first glimpses of what effortless might feel like from drugs and alcohol. They work great for a time. Have that drink, and all of a sudden I feel wonderful. I don't have any problems anymore. That anxiety would just go right out the window. But it's how do you get that, in a real way? And then that gives you a little. That's what Rose gave to me. I think more than anything, possibility.
Yeah, could you explain a little bit or talk a little bit why the ego mind feels the necessity to attach supernatural qualities to natural occurrences in our lives?
Yeah, magical thinking.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. We had to give a biography in rehab, we talked for 3 hours about the story of our life, and I got to the end of it, and the counselor says, "Do you know how many times you said magic, in your biography?" We can just get into a belief that everything is, is very important and magical and spiritual in our lives, and that gives us a boost that we're special. That pumps up the self-love.
Yeah, is it that need to give away our power? Give away our power, let somebody else control us? I mean,
it could. I think what it basically does is just keeps us away from seeing ourselves clearly. That's a horrible thing to see that you're not special,
to avoid reality.
Yeah, or especially bad, either way. To see that you're just another ordinary schmo who's going to head it for the box like everybody else. So that the ego has to be right, and it has to pump itself up that way, and it has to happen all the time. It's got to keep at it. So being able to see that. And how you do it, it's a big smack to the ego.
That word projection always gets me.
Yeah.
Could everything be a projection, even our truth?
Our truth isn't a projection, but our talking about it sure.
Well,
is,
even the truth, the T. When I hear the little T's and the big T's, I always get confused.
Well, that's what you got to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when it gets tricky.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to trust yourself? What are you going to find out? If you got a mind that thinks, that there might not be any big truth, that can be a good thing. You follow that down. I mean, you're not going to be able to do this. You know what I mean? It's just, you're going to be it.
Could there be a space where that doesn't count at all?
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, once that's happened.
Big
then you-
T's, little T's, small T's,
Yeah,
no ladders.
sure.
I don't care. Doesn't matter.
Sure, I remember feeling like that after I had my experience, and then it was like, I think Sean put it a good way. He said it feels like being unemployed.
Well, I'm
You
saying
know,
it could be
you've been
bliss.
searching for years and years for
Yeah.
this thing, and all of a sudden the question's answered, and it's like, what the hell do I do now? I guess I'll get a job or something.
Could it be bliss?
I don't go along with bliss at all.
Okay.
You know, because to me, bliss is the other side of the coin. You're going to have to pull the bad side out sooner or later. And you may feel bliss from the enormous relief of not having to be you anymore, but it doesn't last. And you know, to me, there is no characteristic in a dimensionless state, so why try
Yes.
to shove one on there?
Could you visit a while and know you're going to come back?
No, I don't think that's a conscious choice. No. You might just, imagine yourself at Disneyland and then come back when you're tired of it. But I think things like that are pretty ordained. I don't know. I don't think it does much good to talk about it.
Why is your title? Why is it called Dance with Death?
Oh, I don't remember why I got that. I think when I was in Louisiana, my wife was watching dancing shows all the time. Dancing with the Stars, and So You Think You Can Dance, and all of this stuff. And I used to be amazed at how good some of these people got from all the hard work they would put in and their teachers being really good. And it seemed to me that, this is, if you dance around with the truth, the same thing might happen to you, It just seemed to be plus got to figure out some kind of theme to wrap it around, so that popped up.
But you call it Dancing with Death, right? Is that what your title is?
And it started out Dancing with Death, and then it ended up Dancing with the Truth.
Oh.
I think Dancing with Death is a good one, though. I know Bart's going to talk a little bit about the Don Juan stuff. I thought it used to drive me nuts when Don Juan was always saying, have your death as an advisor. He always used to scare the heck out of you by saying death is right over your left shoulder, And he'd go back there and look at death as an advisor, and it is, the heck. There's nothing to burst the bubbles out of anything by just I'm thinking about there's going to be an end, and then you get hung up in all the Hamlet's little rigmarole. Well, I'll just go ahead and check out, but what if I end up in a place just like this, have to start over? I like the way that guy, I was telling some of these guys a story of the guy in Denver decided to check out. He had medical problems, and he was getting old, so he got all his affairs in order, wrote everything out, laid the papers out on the table, sat down in the chair with the 38 and called 911 and told the woman on the other end, I'm having a suicide. And she says, excuse me? And he goes, hold your ears. Boom. Yeah, dance with death in a classy fashion there. Anybody else got anything? I think we're just about to the end here anyway. Let's partake of Ben's cooking here in a minute. There's a lot of strange things that go on with this. I had some other stuff about, I've noticed that in these funny places like Boulder, Colorado, that there's a heck of a lot of what I've come to call the teenager ego, which is people thinking that they're going to get an easy ride on this, that there's not going to be any work to it, and they hit these neo-advaita websites. I used to call these guys Facebook neos if you get on there too much, because they're on Facebook every day telling you about how wonderful this is, but there's, I just can't buy it that much. When does it stop? I was in groups in Boulder for years too, and as soon as any kind of confrontation or any work started, people would bail out and they move to the next group. And I noticed that's a heck of a block with the ego, wanting to be special. I don't have to do this. I don't have to look at myself. You see yourself at first, you get on the path, and it seems pretty scary. Here's this really screwed up person who's, doing all these projection things I thought only those other people did. And then after a while, you know, you see that, you know, you're just like the old family dog. There's nothing much to you. You might kind of have some love for the poor thing, but, you know, there's no use making a big deal out of it. Any other questions, folks? I'd like to see Luke with his hat back on again. All right, then. Well, thanks a lot for coming. It's really been good. It's been a while since I've been back here. It's good to be back.